Education on September 30th. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and
and
justice for all.
justice for all.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have time for public comment.
We have no callers at this time.
All right. Next board meeting is October 14th at 7, unless we have to have another special meeting before that. Kath? We're on to you.
Okay, Bob, sorry, I just had a little bit of a hard time hearing you. Are you on your iPad tonight? Good. And also let me know, I'm in a little bit of a different room if I end up freezing, because it kind of looks like I am. You know what, guys? Can we move to textbook adoption and let me move my computer? I think that might be a good idea because it looks like I'm freezing here.
Okay. So I'm asking the board to adopt an accounting general journal. It's a Century 21 accounting book for the accounting class at the high school. It's been budgeted for. It's $92.25 a copy. And there is also an online version of this as well.
So moved to adopt the textbook.
Second. Thank you.
Don't thank us yet.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, Bob, you're muted.
Point of order, was this on the agenda?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Then I have a different version.
You didn't get the latest one.
Item 8. Vote on.
No, I'm only up to 7.
No.
There's
Okay.
a revised agenda that was sent out.
Okay, I guess I don't get down that far.
I guess the electrons move slowly up there in the north.
All
Because of the
right,
temperature,
so
Victor.
back to the vote. All in favor of the adoption of this textbook, say aye.
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 Others?
Corey, did you mention the name of the textbook?
Century 21 accounting general journal is what it's called.
Okay, yeah, because that should be part of the motion as well, so we know which textbook was approved.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, anyone who wants to do accounting, it's clearly the best textbook ever. Just saying.
Now I get to say thank you, right? Thank you.
Okay. Kath didn't get back yet from a relocation. So is it a really good textbook, Christine?
All accounting textbooks, I mean, they're so, I mean, I don't know why a high school student would not want to take an accounting class, because that's all I did for 4 years of college and 2 years of grad school. So it's great.
You
Well,
should try physics.
That's true. Oh, Bob already froze on us.
Oh, it's so sad. Bob, come back.
I'm going on another device.
I wonder if we should all chip in and buy Bob a
No.
Wi-Fi extender.
I'm in.
Perhaps we could arrange with Diane to just sneak in and put it somewhere and he'll never know it happened.
I'll do it.
Okay, how's that?
All right.
Okay, you can hear me, Bob?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for your patience tonight. It's been a long time since I've done a meeting from home. So tonight we wanted to talk to you about our reopening plan. And, we call it our reopening plan, except we've already opened. So what we're talking about is the plan to move from hybrid to a full reopening plan, and kind of the decisions that the process of our decision making, as well as the data that we considered in order to make that decision. And I think by way of doing that, what I'll do is just share some of the slides that I shared this week with our parents when we did our parent information session. And as you know, I shared with the board just before the meeting that we had our first identified positive case at Brewster School late this afternoon. So I think that it's important for us, especially given the timing of this information for District 13's first case, as we're poised and ready to begin a full in-person model, that I think that we need to talk this evening about whether it continues to be appropriate to follow our schedule for reopening fully on Monday. And so as we kind of continue through the discussion, I think it'll be important to talk about whether pausing for a week might be a good idea. And I'm saying this just because of the nature of the particular case and the fact that it's our first case, and some of the details and the considerations that we are going to need to explore further after I get off the phone or off the meeting with you this evening, continue to work with my team and our health director, and then spend some more time on our contact tracing tomorrow. But if we can just back up a little bit, and this is information that I've shared in writing with people, but for the purpose of the board, I'll just share my screen to go over a few of the details regarding the process of decision making and the data that we've looked at to date. We can get rid of our beautiful faces. And just by way of reminder that during the summer, what we as school districts received information from the State Department of Education with essentially an expectation that all schools in the state of Connecticut were to open fully, based, as long as the public health data continued to support this model. This was an expectation that I will say, as a school leader at the time, I didn't feel comfortable with, not because our health data didn't support it, but because I felt that this was a pretty significant shift for us as a school district. I also understood some of the fear and hesitancy from our families, our students, and our staff. And so we made the decision to open in hybrid as a way to support that transition and ease us back in, with the understanding that we would be revisiting this in another 3 weeks after we started. And so Our decision process is informed by a number of sources and the kind of the weekly communication and collaboration we have with the Department of Public Health. And most recently, over the course of the past, I believe it's been about a month and a half, there's a Health and Safety Tuesday meeting with the Department of Public Health that has been extraordinarily helpful for us. I have contact with our local health director every Tuesday, and you know, actually he's kind of on the bat line now, so I call him whenever I have any questions. We've also talked with our medical advisor, Dr. Jubileer. We receive information from the State Department of Education weekly. I meet with the 20 area superintendents as a kind of a mechanism of support and comparing notes. We have our planning and response team in district that meets each Friday, and our school-based teams, and we try to elicit staff and student and parent feedback as well. On the 17th of August is when we had a presentation from DPH in conjunction with the Yale School of Public Health. And what they were assisting us with was helping us to make the decision about which model to open in. And with the directive that we were to start with public health first and look at our public health data, and which is our leading and secondary indicators in COVID, and as well as our mitigation strategies. So over the course of the past few weeks after we began school, we looked at our health data, which I'll just give you a quick overview of that. And our health metrics continue to be at this point, and though we know that that can change at any time, we look at a 7-day average, and the past several weeks as we have looked at them, we continue to be in the low range for our county and state. Our process of identifying cases and isolating them, we have a process that's in place. And as I mentioned to you today, that has been put into practice because of an identified case today. But we've also had situations where we've had a student or a staff member who wasn't feeling well, and we were able to follow that protocol. I work very closely with our COVID liaison, Pam Branson, for our clinical nurse coordinator. We talk often. We have a kind of a form that we've created so that we make sure that any situation, a student or staff or family member that's brought to our attention, that we're making sure that we're going through all necessary steps. Our cleaning and disinfecting continues to be an area of strength, I believe, for us, as well as our ventilation in district. Hand hygiene is followed as part of a schedule in our elementary schools, and certainly we have hand sanitizer throughout our buildings. Cohorting we talked about in great length before the school year started, just so we were clear on the extent to which we could meet various cohorting standards in pre-K through 8. Our social distancing of 3 to 6 feet, which is to the maximum extent possible, is an area that will be affected as we, as we move to a full in-person model, just because of the number of desks, the type of furniture we have, the size of the class, and the number of students. And in some cases, we are much closer to 3 feet than we are to 6 feet. Our masks and face coverings, as you know, we have a policy in place. We follow protocols and practices, and I'm extraordinarily proud of our staff and students and their ability to meet those. This is, I kind of stay up on Thursday nights to see when this is going to come out. Usually it's out on a Thursday afternoon. And so I just kind of extracted the first 4 counties, and this was our data that we looked at last week in Middlesex County. And then in parentheses, this is the data from the prior week. So you can see that the leading indicators is simply the number of new COVID cases per 100,000 per day on a 7-day average. And then the secondary indicators are the percent positivity, new COVID hospitalizations, and then the percent COVID-like illness, hospital emergency department visits. And you'll see that we remain in the low range in all of those indicators, and see a slight uptick in the percentage of COVID-like illnesses and hospital visits. Again, more of this information was part of this presentation for parents the past 2 nights, just to review the guidance that is in the Achieve Adopt plan from the state of Connecticut in terms of social distancing. This is, again, this was mostly for parents because I think I anticipated as we moved farther into the fall, into the cool weather, and the beginning of flu season, which can, generally we're really getting into flu season in January, but occasionally we can see the onset of flu, according to our school nurses, as early as the fall. So this is a chart that we followed carefully today, and we have a cadre of administrators who right now are making phone calls to individuals who are considered close contacts, and giving them the information in terms of the amount of time that they'll need to quarantine based on being a close contact of the affected individual. This is something I've also reviewed with the board, and that is just the various directions for, and I'll just pull this up quickly, about how we proceed as school districts when we have an identified case in our school. And you look at it differently when it has actually happened. And one of the things that we have talked about before is that although around the state we've seen school districts responding in different ways, and I think it's easy to draw the conclusion that if school districts are closed for an extended amount of time, that it's probably due to the severity of the spread, when in fact, so far, according to the data from the Department of Public Health, they are not seeing the spread of the virus in school, which doesn't mean that that's not going to happen. Just at our September 22nd meeting, that wasn't the case at the time. So in many cases, it has to do with the scope of the contact tracing. And in this case, for me, with learning of, we have a community connection with a child care center. And so there's some additional variables that we need to be looking at in order to be certain that our scope and identification of those individuals who really should be quarantining are contacted by us. Which is why, first of all, I'm in my letter to families and schools, I have decided to close Brewster School tomorrow. And this really has to do with the availability of staff and our availability of subs, as well as our ability to thoroughly contact trace. I anticipate that this will that we'll be able to finish this in the morning. And if this isn't the case, or we learn new information, that means that it may be more widespread, or we need more time for contact tracing, then parents at Brewster School will be identified by noon tomorrow. I also think because of the kind of secondary implications of the timing of this particular case, the potential ramifications, mostly in terms of logistical ramifications, that I think that it would be in everyone's best interest that we postpone by a week the starting of an in-person model until the Tuesday after Columbus Day. I say that also knowing that the coming week could unfold in our county and in our district in a different way, and make us have to look at that timeline again. But I wanted to be sure that I shared that with the board right away. I think in terms of our full in-person plan, I wanted Corey to talk a little bit about really what were our priorities, what will that look like, and what will it look like for our students in the remote C group. I also, as you're talking, Corey, I'm going to try to pull up a document that just kind of shows the numbers of students in cohort A, cohort B, and cohort C, and some of the changes that have happened since we shared that we would be going to a full in-person model.
Sure. So we know that going full in person is the best model for our students. There is no substitute for in-person learning, of course. In making this decision, we wanted to ensure that our students had as much time in front of us as well, if in fact we ever did need to, unfortunately, go out, full quarantine. In addition to that, our teachers have been meeting and collaborating with one another across district, and they have been curriculum compacting to ensure that our students are getting the education that they deserve and that they need right now, and to transition the students back in person as a full class, to be able to differentiate for our students, to be able to work with the students in person is really the best model for our children. And so in making those decisions, we wanted to ensure that we had that opportunity to do that. As far as the remote C students are concerned, for our elementary, we have a cadre of teachers, a remote team of teachers. We have our literacy and our math coaches, our science specialist, our enrichment teacher. We have a social studies, a fifth grade social studies teacher. So we have a cadre of teachers who are part of that elementary remote team, and also some teachers who are out right now. It's working beautifully. I believe, Kath, and I know you're going to pull up those numbers, but I believe there's 188 students in general in cohort C, K to 12. But for our elementary, they work through a schedule, and the students start at 9 o'clock in the morning, and the schedule goes until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And there's a combination of synchronous and asynchronous learning that is happening and teaching that's happening. So that model has really worked well for our students. And I've had the opportunity to actually observe the virtual learning, and it truly is amazing. There's a lot of differentiation that happens within that model, and a lot of individual attention for those students. For the middle school, they too have a similar schedule where there's a combination of teachers, literacy and math coaches, as well as our science specialist, an LMS teacher, our enrichment teacher, and a teacher who's out teaching remotely. And again, that's working beautifully for our middle school students as well. And I did have an opportunity to observe that too. And it was really just amazing to watch. So I'm very comfortable with our remote C students getting their education right now too. At the high school, the students, as we move to an in-person model, or when we move to an in-person model, the students will be required to attend the classes, and the 15 minutes at the beginning of a lesson, perhaps, and the 15 minutes at the end of a lesson, or the teacher will link them in as to when they want them in that lesson. Right now, the students are remoting in the last 15 minutes of each lesson for that cohort C. That will change once we go in person, because the teachers right now are providing students with recorded lessons as well. So if students can't get on at a certain time, they're allowed to watch the recording. But that will change once we move to an in-person model.
Corey, thank you for that. And I was multitasking, so I probably missed half of what you said. Not really. But I think when I think about what are, in our decision to move to a full in-person model, I think about what some of the long and short-term goals were for us. And short-term, keep maintaining a safe school environment, keep maintaining the health of the students and staff, so that we're also contributing to a healthy community. Keep following the protocols, keep paying attention, keep being informed, keep listening to experts so that we're making the right decision for our students. And then I think it's that reconnection, the reconnection of students to each other. We're really seeing that we've hit the tipping point. Our students are, and our parents are communicating with us about the kind of the lack of connection and affiliation that some of our students are feeling. So if we can get that reconnection, that's critically important for us. We also want our students to begin to really see themselves as students again, and to help them to increase that academic stamina. And certainly we have students who simply love to learn. They love to learn. They take the initiative. They want to explore. They want to build a knowledge base. But what we're seeing for some students, for many students, is they've lost the muscle. They lost their learning muscle. And so we have a short-term goal of trying to build that muscle up. And that muscle, I think, gets built in part by the fact that they're working with teachers who are connected to them. They begin to get interested and engaged in their work. And, another kind of short/long-term goal is that we have a better understanding of where our students are individually and then collectively. What do our first graders looking like? What are the standards that we need to teach? What kind of modifications do we need to do? Do we have students who need intervention? Do we have students who really need to have their learning accelerated? And, as Corey and I were talking about this kind of short-term, long-term, I said to her, this is our strategic plan for this year. This is our strategic coherence plan for improvement in District 13. The acknowledgement of where we are, the steps we need to take, and then I just feel like we've got to reconnect to the mothership, because we were on our way. We were on our way in District 13. And when I look at the student achievement, growth over time, when I look at our strategic visioning and portrait of the graduate, I think we have to figure out how we're going to reconnect to the mothership. So those were, yes, there are health metrics and the mitigation strategies And there's a very personal District 13 story that we felt is, there's a sense of urgency around that, but that urgency does not supersede our focus on safety and health.
Kath, can I just
sure.
add in? So
Yeah.
as Dr. Serino mentioned, the trajectory that we were moving in was so positive, and we need to continue that. We can't lose sight of that. And that was a real push to get our students into school as well. And so we want to continue that, as she mentioned, our schools of distinction, and the fact that we were in the top of our DERG. So we would like to continue that trajectory. So I just want to reiterate that.
I wanted to just go back to something because I see that I had a question about, if we're in a situation where we have, identified children and families and let them know that they were a close contact of someone who has tested positive. Our advice is always, please contact your healthcare your healthcare provider, and please reach out to your child's pediatrician if it's a student. We don't tell people that they should get tested or they have to get tested. What we're saying to them is, please contact your healthcare provider. What most healthcare in our experience so far, every child or adult who has been, and this has all been out of school at this point, has been a close contact, has been told by their healthcare provider to have a PCR test. Some people have had the rapid test, and after getting those results based on the situation, have then been requested to have a PCR test. The payment for those tests at this point is dependent on the family's health insurance and whatever their health insurance coverage is. I had heard that for some health insurance companies, that if you were just kind of precautionarily being tested and you didn't have a doctor's order or didn't have symptoms, that it wasn't covered. I have only actually at this point looked into the district's coverage with Connecticut, which fully covers any COVID tests. Does anybody have any other questions about that? Any kind of protocol questions? And I'm happy to follow up on any questions you may have that I don't have the answer to at this point. Missy, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you can get tested for free at the community health center, any of them around Connecticut, no matter if you have symptoms or not, just for anyone that's listening.
Well, that's, and we just received information yesterday of testing centers and a lot of information that actually came from our superintendent's group. And I sent it to Pam last night to say, maybe we can talk about this today. And we didn't quite get to it this afternoon, but I'm sure we'll talk about that later this evening, because obviously I'll be sending a follow-up email to our parents either later this evening or tomorrow morning. And I think some of that information could be very helpful for people to have.
Yeah, I just know that some places don't want to test kids, I was told, but I know that the community health is testing anyone, and they have drive-by from either 9 to 12 or 9 to 1. You can check their website. The closest one to us is Middletown.
Yeah, and I think some people, don't want to test 3-year-olds, for instance. And that is an area that we're really, while there are some cases that we would need a negative test result for a student or staff member to return to school, if they want to come back to school, they're going to get tested. So if you go back to that chart, that's what we need to see for reentry to work or school. Any other questions? We had been talking about a possible vote tonight. I mean, again, I think the timing of our first case on the evening that we were talking about this, and we had originally thought that we would be able to talk about this at the Student Achievement Committee, and we didn't quite wrap it up there. And I think any of you who attended that meeting could see that we had we asked some teachers to come and talk about what their experience had been in hybrid, and we clearly have, and really primarily among our teaching staff is where we're hearing more from people than any of our other union or non-union employees. And I think I have very close communication with our union leadership and have been in touch with Craig about the areas that people may have questions about or would like to see more support, or for instance, as we bring more students back, and I'll give you one example. We before teachers came back, we closed our faculty rooms and kitchen areas. We discontinued the use of shared microwaves and shared coffee pots and refrigerators. And this was a recommendation that that was out there for business and school reopening. As students are eating in their classrooms and teachers are feeling like they need some place to go, and they're missing the sense of kind of camaraderie and collaboration that sometimes comes from just eating lunch together. So, we're just exercising extreme caution, whether we're in hybrid or fully reopened, but we're working closely with the union to say, what is it that we can do? What is it that we can all do together so that we're supporting this process, and most importantly, supporting children, and we're learning as we go. It's a big transition for a big organization. So anyone who has had close contact with an individual who has tested positive is required to be quarantined for 14 days from the date of contact. And what was my other thought that I wanted to give to you there? I just, it will come back to me, but I just wanted to make sure. And there can be variations there. We may have a student who is quarantining for 14 days, has immediately been taken by their parent and has a negative test, and then has a parent who tests positive within that 14-day window. We may have a student who's had a close contact, and because this is something else that we do, if we look back at a student's self-certify, kind of their self-certified checklist over the course of the past few days, and realize, ooh, that child wasn't in school for the past couple of days because they were out with a fever. So we've got perhaps a symptomatic student who's tested and perhaps tests positive. So there are a lot of nuances to any given situation, and this is our first time. So we immediately got together as a team to kind of review the cases. What's the communication? What do we know? As soon as I had the information, I was in touch with the school nurse, the school principal, so we could immediately start doing contact tracing. while simultaneously talking to our health director to give a high level. What we find is, I think almost in every situation, just in talking to other superintendents, is that as you continue to look and talk, you find more information. And so sometimes that sphere of influence or impact begins to grow larger. It doesn't necessarily mean it begins to grow more serious. It just gets larger in terms of our responsibility for contact tracing. So I know we have on the agenda a possible vote for, and I know that what we had done at the last meeting was kind of endorsing the recommendation for opening in hybrid. And so Bob and I thought that we would simply put it on the agenda in the same way, with the same thought of how we might approach this evening.
Yeah, I think that the last time we endorsed the recommendations of the superintendent to go to hybrid, and I think, you know, we can endorse the recommendations of the superintendent to go to in person under the same criteria. I did listen to all the questions from the parents the other night on all three calls. Most of the questions were related to mechanics. Impacts on it. I thought the high school issues were most of them centered about how are the remote learners going to get in contact, and how are they going to, you know, keep in contact and things like that. So the issues are really about how is it going to work, not whether or not it should work. So I thought the response to the parents was pretty positive. I did actually talk to a bunch of other parents over the weekend, and we're pretty positive about getting their kids back to school. It's too bad that we have to delay, but I also think that it's wise to delay until we get everything sorted out with this case. So if any other comments on it? You were going to show the number of remote learners. I thought that's still of interest.
And I did. I did want to note, Bob, a delay of a week, given the enormity of what we're doing, and that, you know, moving into in person. Also, as I said, there's a potential for logistical impact, and I don't want my teachers on a Sunday night waiting to hear from us on specific details. So I think, I believe that it's the right move for District 13, and it is not without complexity to not be beginning an in-person model on Monday.
There are also a lot of questions about the Wednesday effort, whether it's going to be a shortened school, and whether or not it coincides with professional development, and when we go to a full Wednesday. So that has something to do with your other item on here about the schedule. There were a lot of questions about that as well.
Okay, let me just share my screen here. Okay, get out of here. Cohort C. So this is something that I shared with my administrators this morning, just to get an idea of what kind of movement we were seeing. As you can see at the top, moved out of cohort C to full in person. So these are students who had been working remotely only. And then the number of students who were moving from in person, which is our current hybrid. And you know, because we're opening fully, that they're moving out. So you see the numbers there. At Brewster, at Lyman, we have 3 students coming back into the building and 1 leaving. Memorial has 3 coming back and 2 leaving. Strong, 1 coming back and 4 going out. And at the high school, 3 students coming back in and 8 students, or 2, 4, 7, 8 students going out. And then our total numbers, this is a numbers from Jen in our tech department, which you can run your eyes over that to see that, you know, a total of 187 students at this point who are in remote learning at this time.
What's the D?
The cohort D is going to be going back into cohort C right now.
Okay.
So do you want to talk a little bit about the Wednesdays, Kath?
Sure. And that again would result in a calendar change that I would need the board to vote on. You know, we had talked about whether we would persist it with a, you know, not in person for Wednesdays, but I will say based on parent feedback, as well as the kind of the impact on teachers to be teaching in person and then also doing remote teaching on a Wednesday did not seem to be a way to really maximize our efforts in all the areas that we were trying to achieve. So what we did was to move a professional development day from March until next week, Wednesday, which now we're not fully in person next Wednesday. Corey, well, it works actually perfectly. And then we just decided to do early release time. And Corey, maybe you can talk a little bit about the rationale for why we, you know, what are the things that need to be done in that early release on those Wednesdays until Thanksgiving?
Sure. At that time, teachers are still continuing to do some cross-planning and co-planning together. In addition, there needs to be some transition time as they're getting the full classes together, and to do some curriculum compacting. There's a lot involved with the curriculum. They were doing a divide and conquer piece, and now the teams across districts still need to be in sync with one another. And to keep in mind too, we have that cohort C, who was part of that divide and conquer group where they had a shared responsibility, and now the remote teachers will not have that support from their colleagues, and so they need additional time as well to put together all the recordings and all the lessons that need to go out. For some of those teachers, they're teaching 3 different grade levels and sometimes multiple content areas. And so it's a great deal of transition for them.
Bob, I don't know if we're on the item yet for the voting on the calendar.
If we have support of going to the,
Sorry, I'm skipping
we need
ahead.
to go to the possible voting in person. I mean, if we want to endorse the plan, like to have, you know, we had a vote on it the last time. Very
Would you like a motion?
Yes, please.
Therefore, I move that the Regional School District 13 Board of Education endorse the in-person reopening plan as suggested by Superintendent Serena.
To start on October 13th.
We can add that.
Second.
Is there any further discussion on this? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstain? Andrew. All right, the next item is the schedule. Do you want to give us the schedule, Kath?
Sure, I'm just gonna move you guys aside so I can look at the calendar. The change in the schedule would be, hold on a sec, would be to have a full professional development day on October 7th, to eliminate the early release on October 9th, and to add early release days on October 14th, October 20th, November 4th, November 11th, and November 18th.
Is it October 20th or 21st? The 20th is a Tuesday.
I'm sorry. It would be, I think October 21st is a Wednesday.
Yes, and then there was already, it was already early release for parents.
So we don't need
conferences
to,
the
I'm
21st
sorry.
and 22nd.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We don't need to make that change because it was already an early release. So the 7th as a full PD day, the calendar on the 9th would eliminate the early release. And so it would be the 14th, the 28th, November 4th, 11th, and 18th as early release days.
All right, can I have a motion to approve the change in schedule?
I will so move the dates as presented by Superintendent Sereno.
Second.
Any comments? All in favor, please say aye.
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 And just another calendar item and something that we will need to talk about just with the teachers' contract, because they worked an additional 2 days by coming in to, we added 2 teacher work days. So we're going to need to, at some point, modify the calendar, either by just taking those 2 days off of the end of the year. I've been in conversation with Craig about that, but I would like to talk a little bit further about what kind of changes we would make to the calendar, because we may find that we may want to have a day that is a non-school day between now and the school year, just based on what's happening.
I think it's kind of early to figure that out. We could be in lots of odd things before the end of the years.
Yes, we could,
So
and we may find ourselves in February vacation, the February break, and feel like we could add another day or 2. The other consideration there is that snow days at this point, people are hopeful that snow days aren't going to count, but at this point, that is not something that the State Department of Education has sanctioned as you can have a virtual day on a snow day and it can be counted as a school day. So we may see some movement on that, but I'm not certain.
We didn't put communications down for this agenda, but they'll go on our next meeting's agenda. But I've had a few, and including what are we doing about fans coming to athletic events, and it's probably worth mentioning it under the current plan if you got a minute.
I do. I just don't. So we met as a Shoreline superintendent group yesterday because we really wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page. And I did share with the board just kind of preliminarily, we've all decided that we won't be allowing outside fans We are going to begin by having family members only of our seniors for, I believe it's the week of the next week. Yeah, do you have that? Do you have the email that I sent you, Bob? Just because before I sent it to the full board, I know I had sent it to you so you could write back to the parent. Anyway, so we'll start with our senior athletes being able to have a couple of family members and then expand that to all athletes on the roster being able to have family members. But within, right now, we can only have 100 people at an outside gathering. We know that that is going to, when we get to the next phase of the governor's reopening plan, that number will increase to 150. We're using a mechanism by which parents have to register and give their email in the event that we ever needed to do contact tracing from one of our athletic events. We're also going to require that all fans wear masks and remain in 6 feet distance unless they're standing with a family member. In terms of volleyball, which is our only indoor our indoor competition at this time, our indoor maximum is 25, so we will not be allowing fans to come into our volleyball games, but we do hope to be live streaming those games for parents. And to the extent possible, each district, if they have the equipment to record games, they will record their home games so that visitors are able to watch.
Good. That senior thing is this week. I guess there's soccer games this week, and next week it begins with families for all grades. So.
Thanks.
So that was another part of this reopening that is been brought to our attention. So, Any other questions or comments on tonight's agendas?
May I make a correction to cohort D, please? Cohort D is actually the students at Strong School who are in school for 4 days out of the week. So I just wanted to make that correction.
It just happens to be that Strong kind of is there are children who attend 4 days a week in the other schools. It just happened to be isolated for Strong School. They just have a designation for that group.
Any other comments? We have time for public comment, Ken?
There are no
Is
callers at
anybody
this
there?
time. Nope, no callers at this time.
May I have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Good night and good luck, Kath.
Thanks. I'll be in touch
Good
with
luck.
you guys as a board. Okay. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Right.
Yeah, good night.